So, first of all, I also, as well as everyone here, have that same feeling. I feel that we all have come on today to listen to Dr. Solomon about, and that is, regardless of who you want to win, there is a stress and anxiety. There is no closure, I think, is a good word to part of this. And I think that dealing with any problem without closure makes it so much more difficult to deal with. At least I speak for myself. And that's why before today, who no one knew how it would look this morning, but I do know that it was so important to bring someone, and Dr. Solomon is my resident expert, to really talk about this, help us with some tools of dealing with it and getting through it. But it's not just about today. I think it's important really to talk about the tomorrow, whenever that tomorrow is, whether it's Thursday or next week or in a month,
Yeah.
hopefully not so long. But I think it's very important to have this conversation and the tools and just to be able to talk. I think I shared this last time Dr. Solomon was on, but there is a quote. It's a passage from Tehillim that says, "Da'aga belev ish," a worry in the heart of man. So the Tehillim says Yashchena. There is different ways to take that word. Some people say Yisichena, which means to talk it over with someone else. The other translation is Yashchena, push it out of your mind. So there are different ways that we deal with our issues. Sometimes we ignore them, and other times we talk to somebody who can help us. And that is where Dr. Solomon, I think his entire life is devoted to this talking, to this helping, having a friend. As we always say in Hebrew, you should look for a rofe yadid, a friend who is a doctor who is a friend, because they care about you. They want what's best for you, and they're going to go the extra mile to make sure that what they would want done for themselves is done for you as well. So, in the sense of Dr. Solomon's credentials, he's been in the state of Arizona. I think we figured out, was it since the 1970s?
1977.
1977. He's been in practice here for over 40 years. He deals with clients and patients that are from children through adulthood. And one of the things that I really like, especially learning more in that June presentation, was how he is very influenced by the meaning and purpose of life. And then of course in the bigger picture of the family dynamics, which is not what we're talking about today. But thank you very much for giving us your time today and your wisdom. And I know I speak for myself, and I can speak for many others, that we are looking forward to your presentation and input.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rabbi Levy. It's an honor and privilege to be asked to present and to try to help people reach a deeper level of understanding in terms of any issue that we might have in life. But this might be one of the most important ones. And as my Uncle Willie used to say when I was very, very young, please warn me before you tell a joke. So I am warning you. Some people say divisiveness. I tend to say divisiveness. Some people say divisiveness. So I had a big argument with my daughter who said I was wrong and that she was right. I looked it up just a few minutes ago and she's 88% right and I'm 22% right, but I'm gaining according to the dynamic of having divisiveness being more and more accepted as the correct pronunciation, or at least one of two correct pronunciations. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about.
Don't look down because
Don't,
your
no,
face disappears.
Please, I have to look wherever I need to look. So if my face disappears, I apologize. My wife told me just now, as she's very inclined to do, is to instruct me on different things. And so she said, please don't look down because people can't see your face. But I do have a good head of hair, I've been told, so look at that. Okay. So I'm going to be talking today about, you know, divisiveness and what I can contribute, perhaps more than from any other perspective, is my training as a psychoanalyst and as a psychologist. And what I want to just help you to understand is the context of what I hope to stimulate in terms of discussion. And please, if you have any questions or comments or whatever, I do not mind being interrupted at all. In fact, since, and this I attribute to having grown up in New Jersey and New York, if we didn't interrupt each other, we weren't sure if the other person was actually listening to us. So if the interruption has anything to do with what I'm talking about, please interrupt me, and then I'll really know you're listening. So what kind of doctor? I'm a PhD clinical psychologist. I see one question here. I'm a PhD clinical psychologist. I got my doctorate in clinical psychology from Long Island University in Brooklyn, New York. And I have a PsyD, a doctorate in contemporary psychoanalysis from the Institute of Contemporary Psychoanalysis in Los Angeles. What else? Camera too low. Okay, let me fix the camera. Can't see all of Dr. Salomon's face. Okay.
You're good now.
I'm good now. Am I good to go?
Yes.
See you later. Okay, see you later. Let me talk about what I think will give us a good context to understand the terrible split in this country today, as evidenced by almost like a 50-50 split in the polls, almost, depending on who you're listening to. It's one side can't believe how close the other side is to itself in terms of the numbers. So it's really what we call a split. And this is probably a sales call. Yes. One of the annoying things of modern day is many sales calls, but I'm sorry, I have to have my phone on because part of what I do is really help people who have serious problems. And some of them, I'm sorry to have to say, have serious suicidal issues currently. So I do have to really be 24/7 accessible. And that's my, I think my best way of helping people is to be 24/7 accessible and hope that they don't abuse that. And most people really don't. And I'm proud to say I have, in 40+ years of practice, I never lost a patient to suicide. Thank God. Thank you, Hashem. So let me talk a little bit about defense mechanisms. Defense mechanisms are ways we have of protecting ourselves. They are mainly unconscious, meaning we have no conscious awareness, but they're very dynamic in that they are there and they're constantly, continuously affecting us. One of the main defense mechanisms that almost everyone uses is repression. Rabbi Levy kind of alluded to it before when he said, push it out of your mind. My Uncle Willie would say, "Lazim gain." So if you push something down into your unconscious, you're doing that unconsciously usually, and you don't even know you're doing it. And then we call this, forgetting. Okay, but it's affecting us, it's there. So that's repression. However, in contrast to that, we have another very interesting defense mechanism that is called splitting and dissociation. Now, this will relate more to divisiveness. Why? Because in dissociation, we have two parallel processes that are part of us that know not of each other or do not intermingle with each other in any meaningful way as we're going about our lives trying to do well. So we have one part over here going parallel to another part over here, and they have very different qualities and they don't mix well. And we're not aware of the disconnect between the two, but we are, and this was what makes it complicated, we are aware when we're in one state or another that we're in that state. Okay. So there are many defense mechanisms, many, and all of them can be healthy at times and unhealthy at times. None is, quote, bad and the other good, or sometimes one is bad, sometimes the same is good, depending on the context. And two other defense mechanisms that I want to mention just quickly are projection and introjection. In projection, we attribute to someone or something outside of us the quality of us that we have difficulty accepting in ourselves. So basically we're saying unconsciously, okay, this is not me, this is you. And we deal with it in the other person as if it belongs to that other person. Projection. Introjection is the opposite, where we are actually taking in a quality that we like and that we want to make a part of ourselves, but it's kind of a stranger in us for a while, unless and until we can really fully identify with it, and then it becomes part of who we are. It becomes part of our identity. So you can see where maybe I'm trying to articulate some of the issues in the divisiveness that we are facing here of seemingly two very opposite camps, or people who take one side of an issue against people who take another side of the issue. And what I see is, for some reason, an inability or an unwillingness to integrate or intermingle or mix the issues and recognize the alien parts of what we see in the other camp as actually being part of ourselves too. And so the other, with a capital O, becomes the enemy. And of course, we are the righteous ones. Okay. The last point I want to make, let me just check here. I'm sorry, I didn't check in the chat recently. Someone knows about Juniors across the street. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, the best fried chicken in Brooklyn. Oh, very nice. That was Janet Lotman. Okay, good. Good. Old home week. Okay.
The one question I think that came up from what you spoke about was, you had
What?
mentioned about the suicide patients of yours that are suicidal, and you mentioned recent. So the question was, do these issues, did they come up since last night or because of last night?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean recent. I mean current. I mean, I'm dealing with these patients now. Yeah, it's not like
It's because
nothing
of the election,
happened.
I think.
Nothing happened last night. Nothing directly related to the election, if that's the real question here. But certainly the current socio-political climate, which I see stressing everyone out, is not helping the ones of us who are less able, let's say, to hold it together right now. It's just adding a whole other layer of tremendous stress and burden to all people. Any other questions that came up? Let's see.
Not yet. I'll keep you posted.
Actually, so you thank Sharon. What did Sharon do here?
She made sure you were in the camera.
Oh, okay. I always want to give her credit, but I like to know what the credit is for. Okay, so so just one other didactic, let's say, point that I want to get across is that I believe we all need 4 legs under our table. So this is a metaphor for the 4 areas that I think we need to deal with, especially as Jewish people. The first one, being the most important, is the soul, which I feel is mainly our awareness, recognition, and connection with Hashem. And whatever we do, we try to do, to paraphrase something I learned recently, I think whenever we're arguing with someone, it needs to be in the name of heaven, for the sake of what we feel Hashem really wants for us, really would like us to emulate. So the soul is one main leg. Another main leg, of course, is the body. The house that we live in is our body, and it's, of course, in Jewish teaching, I believe, we need to regard it as being temporarily on loan to us, and that we need to take as good care of it as possible. Not to neglect it, not to dismiss it, not to minimize it, but to take good care of our body. And that's why I try to exercise once in a while. The third is something that I think we've only come around to through our evolution in the last maybe 120 years, and that is the mind, the psychology, the cognitive balance with the emotional balance, with our drives and our instincts. And the fourth, which has again to do, of course, with Torah and mitzvot, is relationship, the recognition that we are all children of God. And this hopefully will come into discussion when we're talking about how do we hold together as a community. We need to recognize that we are all the children of God, and that we're here to help each other, not to hurt each other, not to fight with each other. But of course, sometimes we do have to fight with each other. But the ultimate purpose is to be good with each other. So quickly repeating: soul, body, mind, relationships. 4 legs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Amazing how repressing memories that are so painful is a real yes, it's the most universal and the most often used defense, to just bring out a positive about it, which isn't usually thought about, but it's important to realize. We wouldn't be able to function probably as humans if we didn't repress massive amounts of material. How could we attend to any situation that is emerging and that needs our attention if we have several million memories and events floating around in our heads, it's pretty impossible to even think about that. I really like this one about the Brooklyn Center, the LIU Brooklyn. Anyway, so what? Who wants to talk? Who wants to ask a question or talk? Let's talk. I don't like lecturing that much. I
I'll
like
start with a
discussion.
question.
Yeah, please.
So anything that you share now are very, I'm going to say, they're more intellectual. What's the form to make it practical? Or what's the method to make it practical in our own lives?
Okay, so okay, that's an excellent really question. It's the one that I have the hardest time with, is being practical, as Sharon will tell you immediately. So the best way that I know that I have is to ask myself a question and to try to be self-critical, introspective, before I'm critical of someone else and trying to confront them, even in a good way of, hey, I know you're not seeing this, and I'm really trying to help you, and if you could just see it, you would be 1,000 times better off as a human being. You know, before I do that, I want to ask myself, what am I maybe not seeing? And if I'm looking over there and I'm seeing, if I'm dissociating or splitting from another person, and I'm sorry, I left this out before and I need to put it in right now. The cause, the main cause of dissociation is the actual inability to mix all, I'm sorry, let me start again. The inability to mix good with bad qualities. So what does that result in? All good in one object or one thing, all bad in another object or human or thing. Okay, so it's the splitting of good from bad into pure good and pure bad. Very little to nothing in life is pure good and or pure bad. We all have imperfections. We all have flaws. Almost everything we encounter has some good in it, some bad in it, and so to make it practical again, to go back to that good, very good question, is ask yourself, how am I maybe not seeing that this bad part of this other philosophy or attitude about healthcare, immigration, democracy, elitism, whatever. How is that maybe part of myself, and where do I need to try to maybe integrate? Because that's the opposite, right, of splitting and dividing and separating, is how do I integrate these very opposing qualities in a way that helps us to make progress, constructive progress.
I unmuted. Can I speak? Or do you want me to chat in the box?
I prefer speaking, if that's okay, Rabbi.
Hi, it's Janet, the LIU girl.
Oh, forgot, from Brooklyn.
Yeah, the Brooklyn girl. So, you know, looking at the little summary for what was going to happen today.
Yeah.
So I was reminded that two very important people in my life, and I'll just speak about one. One of my sons, we are on opposite ends of our political beliefs.
Okay.
And so we have some tough conversations.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so this is, you know, this child of mine who's almost 45,
Yeah.
he didn't grow in my womb, he grew in my heart, as I say, yeah. And we end every conversation with, I love you, Andy, I love you, Mom. And, you know, I go, I know, you know, so I know I'm not going to convince him and he's not going to convince me.
Right.
But the love that we have for each other just overrides the
The differences.
yeah, the
Yeah.
division.
Or, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Political is a very big, broad term. And I'm wondering whether I should even ask you, can you mention a more specific issue politically? And maybe I can add something to it.
Well, I'm liberal and he's not. And
Okay.
even with, you know, this really bugs me is he's, and you know, I have two beautiful young granddaughters.
Okay.
You know, won't wear masks. Thinks it's, you know,
They won't wear
protect.
masks.
Yeah, he doesn't do that, only when he has to. Only when he has to. And, you know, just things like that. So that's all I really want to say.
Okay, okay. So that, okay, so not to get too personal, but, you know, maybe to give you and the audience, the participants, some ideas to work with here, I would say first that it sounds like, you know, there's no hate between the two of you. There's maybe polarization, but my understanding of hate is love that is bitterly disappointed. And the love, you can't really hate someone or something really truly deeply unless there was love there. And that person betrayed the love in such a terrible way that it actually, now the love is covered over by hate. So I'm very happy to hear that you end it with love, and I know you love me, and you know, I would just add to that, I know that you know. So, you know, funny. So but okay, so hatred is love that is bitterly disappointed, and when we find ourselves hating, that's when we really, really need to do some work on ourselves and understand what the heck happened to the love. Because hatred implies, you know, terrible things that we're willing to do to the other person, which could be, you know, life-threatening. So we don't really want to go there. That's not what we're here. That's not why Hashem created us, really, except only to defend ourselves. Immediately, we have a right to defend our own lives. Okay. What was the other thought I had? Oh, yes, thank you. So you used the word liberal. What's the opposite of liberal? Let's say conservative. Okay, so what's the underlying psychoanalytic issue there? Because that's where I think I might be able to contribute. In my opinion, it has to do with dependency. And what is the best way to help a person to become not, I know I'm going to surprise some people, that's okay. I mean, I hope you learn, and I hope I learn from you. Not to become independent, but to become interdependent. So the 3 stages of life, I think, in terms of our development, is we begin as dependent children. We become independent through adolescence and young adulthood by gradual stages, sometimes not so gradual if life throws us for a loop. And then though, in marriage and creating a beautiful family, with our spouses, we become interdependent. So what does that mean? And this is good. Thank you so much for the question, because it now leads us to a nice insight, I think, in terms of divisiveness, or as my daughter would like me to say, divisiveness. Why do I have a trouble with that? I don't know. But so let's talk about a husband and a wife. What does that mean, interdependent? It means that where one has a weakness, the other has maybe a strength that can help with that weakness, and vice versa. So none of us are exactly matched in terms of our weaknesses and our strengths. And what we try to do is supplement the other person's weakness with our strength. And we need to give of our strength. And we also, and this is what's hard, much harder for a lot of people, we need to receive the strength of others to help us. So we're supposed to be humble. We're supposed to not be arrogant, not think that we are completely self-sufficient. I don't think any of us are. And so look how much I'm talking about this. So what other questions do we have?
Lou, did you have a question? I know you had unmuted your mic before.
You were saying about all good, all bad.
Yes.
And okay, and we're not, it's just inability to see the good on the other side.
Yes.
And that's what has happened, I think, if I'm understanding it, to our politicians.
Yes.
They know there's good. They know there's another. The reason they can't get anything done and negotiate. Once upon a time, they could get together off the floor and say, well, that isn't so bad. Let's do it this way. They
Yes.
have decided to never do that now. And that's made this, divisiveness, so terrible, terrible in our government.
Yes.
And then we get to these, I mean, in the election, I don't know. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Let me ask you a question.
I wish
Let me ask you a question. What happened to our love and ability to compromise?
Well, that's the word. It became, well, the leaders of the parties, I don't think allow compromise. They don't. They want total. I mean, if
allegiance.
you're a Democrat, you will follow Nancy, and you won't follow Harry's. And so otherwise you won't get a decent job. They control you, and so I think that's the problem in what we're talking about. Government.
So let me give.
Government is not normal people. Normal people will figure out a way to compromise.
What's normal? There is no normal.
Who want to figure out a way to compromise. They would like to have peace, and help. What was the term? Interdependent.
Interdependency.
Yeah, they would. Normal people look for that to make life go along for a long time and work.
I would say reasonable people do that. Yeah, I really don't believe any of us are normal, and we shouldn't even use that except in some sort of idealistic way.
So theoretically, the politicians are not, quote, normal people, because they don't look for compromise. They don't look for the interdependence to work. Right. And it's, when I meet with the other side, I try to say, yeah, but there's this part of it that is, you talk about abortion. Nobody wants abortion. There's people that say the woman has a right to decision. Well, yes. I don't know if these people, you worry about this justice. I don't think Roe will ever go away. It'll get picked on, but these people, I think, have the logic to say, we can't go back to the way that the world was before.
Yeah.
And with that, I don't think it'll go away. Now, it may get chipped away at and made more difficult, but
Can I jump in though to make this a practical question in a sense? Meaning, I think that a lot of people
I'm
listening
going to
might.
call you Rabbi Practical from now on.
Well, I think that's the most important part. Meaning, I can talk about all day long in the sense of politicians and why they're not getting along and saying it's because they don't see each other as human beings respectfully.
Yeah.
But we're not the politicians. Let's talk about ourselves for a second. I see it going on I mean, Janet had a great example of her own family where it's working out fine.
Yes.
In other families, you can't even talk a different opinion, and in friendships that have been lost because of it. And I'm not talking about Facebook friends, I'm talking about real friends.
Yes.
So really the question is, I guess I like the word practical. What is the thought to move with that?
Here's my thought for practical compromise. And it has to do with what I've learned from over 40 years of practice with very difficult issues. I believe I've learned that no one really cares how happy someone else is. No, you know, if the other person is much happier than I am in the relationship, I don't know. I've noticed I don't, and other people don't get that upset about that. But when we feel that the pain is unfairly distributed, that's when we get activated and we get really emotional, hostile, whatever. So the practical, I think, method is to identify the pain, who's carrying most of the pain, and how to distribute it more equally. Then you'll have a compromise that can be sustained over time. Spread the pain fairly and equally. Not that, don't worry so much about the happiness.
Stan, did you have a question or input on that? Or Betty?
I had a comment. We have a friend that we met in Arizona. We're in New York now.
Oh,
And he is a staunch Republican, and I was staunch Democrat. And he called me about 3 weeks ago, and he said to me, no matter how the election turns out, we'll still be friends. Which today is an unusual situation.
yeah.
But it's interesting to me that one of the things that Biden was accused of when he was running for the nomination was that he compromised with Southern Democrats.
Right.
That was a major accusation, that he was willing to compromise.
Yes.
And hey, if I never compromised, I would never be married for 47 years.
You're telling me? You're telling me. Yeah. So that was really a compliment.
Can I press you on that question though that you answered earlier?
Yeah.
You're talking to the individual. Let's say me. Let's say you're talking to me and it says, okay, I have to sort of, it's not about love, it's about finding the compromise. Let's say the other person's not reciprocating in kind. I think that's really what's happening. There are, one side is more open, and it's in each situation. I don't mean side politically. I'm talking about two individuals. One side might be more open to that middle ground, whereas the other one does not find a middle ground or even attempt. I think the problem is even the attempt.
Yes.
And that's, I wonder, do you suggest people, okay, end the friendship because of that? Or do we figure out how, that's the question, I think, that people struggle with today.
There are a couple things you can do with a quote friend unquote that is not reciprocating or doesn't seem to be interested in finding a middle ground. I think the best thing to do is to, first of all, not give up hope, never become hopeless. So that means waiting. It also means thinking creatively how can I reach my friend? How can I reach this person that I really do care about? And how can I help him or her see that the middle ground will not belong to me, and it won't belong to him or her. It will belong to both of us, that we co-own jointly and share as one. That's what's called the third in psychoanalysis. You just hit on the third in psychoanalysis, which is the middle of any disagreement or dispute or integration of different qualities that neither person has the right to claim as their very own, but can only be a part of as one with the other. It's a beautiful concept, the third.
So no one feels they won.
No one should feel they won, although here's a classic, and I don't like this term very much, but it's a good term. It's a win-win.
Right. Or in other words, both people feel they won.
Yes.
Stan, you wanted to add?
Yeah, I always thought of it as a loss-loss.
That's better.
No, seriously, because
No, it's better.
From a
Really, I'm serious. That is better.
win sounds better, but when you're looking at the political end of it, if both sides feel that the other side did better, then it's usually a good compromise.
Yes.
Both sides, in a sense, thought they lost something, but at the same time, it was a good compromise.
Yes. That relates to spreading the pain evenly, right?
Yeah.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful.
But I think part of your answer was patience, which I think is the hardest part of the answer.
Yes. Yes.
That's the
Be
most difficult
patient,
part.
wait, think, be creative, find a way to engage.
It is part of that sort of the classic thought of don't judge a person until you walked in their shoes, or it's not even.
No, that's part of seduction.
So what is the thought
I have to tell you this one story. There's a museum here that deals with Asian art, and they had a showcase that had a shoe that supposedly came from the Dalai Lama.
Hmm.
And it said in a little plaque that they asked the Dalai Lama, does this represent you? And he said, no, it represents the man who made the shoe.
Very good.
seduction? That's an interesting
The
word.
karma.
The karma, that's the karma,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yes. You know, there's good seduction and there's bad seduction.
No, but I still like that. I feel seduction is sort of where you've cheated someone. I like how you use that word.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an interesting.
I used to have a fault. I was conceited. I got rid of that fault, and now I'm perfect.
Yes. Good.
Is there, I know that Dr. Salomon is interested in hearing others as well. So if anyone here is comfortable asking a question or bringing up a point, maybe he hasn't touched it, or maybe he's touched anyone here a little bit more about it. Or maybe you
Especially,
don't.
especially if you can mention a line from one of Bob Dylan's songs now. What am I thinking of?
I'm gonna have to bow out on that part. But again, please don't be shy. This is, as the common English saying and quote these days, it is a safe space. You're not judged on your thought. I think part of my question on all of this is, it sounds very utopian relative to what we're seeing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're far from utopia right now.
Yeah.
But you know, there is a way. There is a way to climb out of this hole. And the way is through some sort of collaboration, cooperation. Finding, sometimes the most practical way is to find a new enemy. And so we can all join forces against a new enemy. We haven't discovered aliens yet for sure, right, on other planets. Maybe that will help us all come together? I don't know.
I actually like that new enemy line. There's a Hebrew story. They share a story in Hebrew. It's not I'm keeping it short, but basically this rabbi walks into a synagogue in Israel and he says, "We're having a Shabbat of unity." So an old man sitting in the back asks, "Unity against whom?" But so I mean, for me, I think that this is all nice and dandy, but you're saying practically it's not something you can just turn around in one day.
Oh, heck no. I almost said a bad word.
This is, again, it's a safe space. Anyone else wanted to ask a question or comment? If you are less inclined to do it publicly, you can message Dr. Salomon privately or myself. Natalie.
Based on your definition of hatred being the opposite of love, can you...
Not the opposite of love, but the reaction to love.
Yeah, right, it stems from
betrayed.
love. Right, betrayed love.
Right.
So can you explain what I'm feeling for Hitler and Trump?
Yes. That they have led many, many people to sin.
So I can have a hatred for them based on their actions.
Not for them, but
coming
for
from a personal loss.
But for leading many. We don't hate people, we hate behavior. Things that people do. And they have led many people to sin. We don't hate people. We hate what they do and what they represent. We're not supposed to hate a person.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a strong point.
Yeah.
Don't hate people.
No.
I mean, there's a Jewish teaching that says hate the sin, not the sinner.
Right. There you go.
That's an interesting.
Yeah. Right.
Again, I'm just prodding people. If you have a question or something that you want Dr. Salomon to touch upon, and Natalie, thank you for that question. I appreciate. If there is any comment, question, please don't be shy. Again, you can write it privately to him.
And also, Rabbi, someone chatted something. I can stay on a little bit longer with anyone who wants to stay, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Stay on with me.
For sure.
Okay.
So what I'll do is, if no one has any questions, meaning official questions that they want to make as part of this, and again, I'm giving another opportunity. You can type it out privately to me.
Yeah.
Or to Dr. Salomon.
Right.
If not, I will thank you I'm going to thank you on behalf of everyone here for all of your input. I think the just sometimes knowing the problem is half of the solution. Sometimes it's the entire solution.
Yes.
And just understanding, I guess, how we think and how we need to view each other, even if we're not there, is already part of that. Weight lifted off of people's shoulders. Like, where are we as a country? Why are we so divided? You get a little bit of perspective on that. It makes people a little bit more comfortable. Not that they're happy with it, but understanding it. So I think this is, a lot has been shared about that as well. Right? And I know we all appreciate that. So thank you. I'm going to wrap it up with that. But again, Dr. Salomon is staying on. I'm going to stay on as well. I like learning. And if you do have questions or you just want to have a chit chat, definitely do stay on, please. And again, on Friday, we do have a slight change of who is presenting. We were going to have just Tiffany Weiss, but she's actually bringing on her string quartet. So you'll have soul strings with the Lotus. That is her group name. I'm going to get the exact name. But again, this is a string quartet that's going to be playing on Friday at 12:30. If you are on the East Coast, That is 2:30.
2:30.
That is for Betty and Stan and whoever else you remind. That is 2:30 on Friday. So again, I look forward to seeing you there, and you can share this with friends as well. It's open to all.